Medicchi to 50.7, equalled by Alfie Costanzo. And there you can see the grid positions, times and the order for those 5. Peter Williamson followed in car 7 with a 51, and Philip Ravel, having only his 3rd drive out of Formula Ford, with a 51.6, equalled by Richard Davison in car 6, and Paul Radisich, that's New Zealander, car 5, as they get away to the first of 25 laps.
That's Medicchi up the inside. Andrew Medicchi in the red car number 2. John Bow slams in behind him. There's Charlie O'Brien coming out of the slipstream on the outside now. But it's Andrew Medicchi into the first corner. John Bow in 2nd position and Charlie O'Brien in 3rd.
So a great start by the Port Macquarie driver, who spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, been very committed to this formula for longer, in fact, than John Bow, who swapped from Formula 5000 there in 2nd place, and Charlie O'Brien, who's moved out of touring cars, first time onto the bowl. With us in the commentary box, a man who won the first round of the Australian Championship at Oran Park, and who was perhaps lucky to get out of a dreadful accident the other day here in practice without anything more than a few scratches and bruises, John Smith. John, these cars are much faster around the circuit than they might appear. You, for instance, off the bowl using 4th gear.
Yes, actually 2 different schools of thought. Well, off the bowl, you can use 3rd gear, a very tall 3rd, or a lowish 4th. The cars would be coming off the bowl at about 110 miles an hour and would be peaking at about 140 to 145 miles an hour at the end of the straight.
All right, well, look, putting yourself into John Bow's car now, which I imagine is one spot you'd love to be, how would you be running the circuit, and what would you be thinking at the moment of your strategy on Medicchi?
Well, Andrew's a very cagey customer. He plays racing very seriously, like everybody out there at the current time. I'd be looking to get a good slipstream tow from Andrew now coming onto the straight, and particularly in John Bow's position, he's in the ideal spot. Should be able to close up and get a draft effect from the back of the RT4 down the straight to be able to get a slingshot at the end of the main straight if he's got a strong enough engine. He's not quite close enough at this stage, but that's what I'd be shooting to do.
We've seen some very forceful driving in Pacifics in the last National Panasonic Series, and of course this year there have been quite a number of cars badly damaged.
Yes, that's right. Well, mine being one of them as well.
Bow and Medicchi are 2 that are not afraid to mix it and to bang wheels.
Oh, no, that's all. Actually, with everybody, no one gives an inch in the Pacific racing. It's probably the most spectacular part of the racing. The cars are so close that you get in situations where you get trapped into a corner where you've got someone trying to crowd you or do something, and it's one of these unfortunate situations exist where you have to bang wheels.
So it's Medicchi, Bow, Charlie O'Brien, Alfie Costanzo, Richard Davison, and behind Davison in 6th place is car number 7, who is Peter Williamson.
Andrew Medicchi down the back of the circuit and really forcing his motor car at high speed, 50.22.
That's a great time.
Great time. Now that is substantially under the lap record of 51.2.
Held by Medicchi too.
51.3, I'm sorry. So Medicchi 1.1 seconds under his own lap record so early in the race and on full tanks of petrol.
John Smith, perhaps one of the reasons might be the modifications that Andrews performed to his RT4 route.
Yes, he's carried out very serious modifications to the car, which was a bit of a one-way trip for him. There's no turning back when he's done what he has done. It obviously has worked. He's changed the whole underside of the car, the Venturi section, which gives the car a lot of downforce, has changed that substantially, widened the track of the car to allow more air to escape through the car to create this sucking
effect. There goes Costanzo.
And Alfie through on Charlie O'Brien. So O'Brien's car, John, not producing the sort of performance that he was able to bring out in practices.
No, it seems that way, Mike. Charlie's car has been tended to by Wayne Eckersley, which was Alan Jones's former mechanic from overseas, and they've done marvellous things with the car, but it looks like he's striking some form of trouble. A lot of the drivers have been complaining all weekend about tyres. We're on a restricted tyre racing this weekend, and the tyres don't seem to be too suitable to this circuit. Consequently, they do tend to go off and make the car very skaty.
Medicchi at about a 50.8 that lap. But talking of people who've come from overseas, and there are several notable ones involved with the racing this weekend, in both this and the Grand Touring and Sport Sedan cars, but Madeki too has the benefits of Bruce Carey, who raced here years ago in Sport Sedans for the Grace Brothers team, and who has been a development engineer with Ralph, the people that designed the car.
Yeah, that's right. He's been in constant touch with Ron Tornak in England with the car.
Mind you, of course, looking at Alfie Costanzo's Tiga, a car built by New Zealanders and Australians in England, is one of the few cars that has the ability, perhaps, to challenge the dominance of Ralph RT4s, because they dominate the class just in numbers, but also pretty much in technology, don't they?
That's right, yeah. The cars are very much the front runners in the class, and it's full marks to Alfie and the Alan Hamilton team for getting the car going so well. As you can see now, he's really getting really up on the pace.
What gear here for Madeki?
Second gear. We came through in second, grabbed third just at the exit of the corner. Andrew's using the theory that I did last year, which was third gear off the bowl, and you have an extra gear for the straight, so you run a fairly tall second, which is a bit of a problem getting when you come onto the bowl. Use just here the second gear again, but I think it's a bit of a compromise, but I always weighed it up that no one can really pass you in that situation, so you can afford to lose a fraction of time there, providing you come onto the straight very quickly.
At the moment, he can't afford to lose any time because Bow's hounding him and pulling him in from behind, and Costanzo's coming with him too. They're all pulling away, as you can see there in that long shot from Charlie O'Brien in fourth, and then there's a further quite large gap of probably about 5 seconds back to fifth place, which is still Richard Davison, closely followed by Peter Williamson, they being in 6th and 7th, and then Phil Revell in 14.
Official lap record to Andrew Madeki, 50.5 seconds, which is quite sensational when you consider that he's driving such a defensive race at the moment.
To correct that, Richard, it's the Queenslander Robert Hanford in 14, not Phil Revell. So he's in 7th place and doing a grand job too.
That's the dice between Peter Williamson and Hanford, and going well. Peter Williamson, of course, in the Tolman Toyota, another chassis again built by Lola in the UK. Williamson had all sorts of difficulties with this motor car when he bought it last year. Only recently has he rung the factory and discovered that he was on entirely the wrong spring rate, has now changed them all, and the car is going substantially better.
And there's Richard Davison, Peter Williamson behind him.
Doug MacArthur, in fact, from New South Wales, who had a big prang in practice yesterday and has repaired the car for today's racing.
And the gap between the leading four, only 1.97 seconds. So with this dice hard between 5th, 6th and 7th place. In 5th place at the moment, Richard Davison driving for Clive Millis Motors, and Williamson hard on him, and by geez, he pulls that off, it'd be brilliant. But Davison closed up, and not many people, John Smith, find they can go on what amounts to the outside as they come onto the reverse camber, because the driver can nip across their bows, as Davison did there to Williamson, as they go to the right-hander.
It's very easy to block the move if you're aware of it, Will, and it makes it very difficult for a person to get around. You can make a car very, very wide around the circuit if you wanted to.
But Williamson's got a lot of speed on the straight and has pulled it off. That's well done. And John, to go round the outside just on really pure speed down the straight is quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, it says volumes for the Toyota motor that he's using as well. 90% of the field, in fact 99% of the field is using Ford-based engines, and Peter Williamson's the only one that's using a Toyota engine. It does have probably about another 5 or 6 horsepower more than the Ford unit.
So Peter Williamson, with 10 laps completed in his 25-lapper, starting to go forward now in 5th place. The man that he next must aim for is car number 3, Charlie O'Brien.
There are the leaders.
And there he is. That's the leading 4. What a clump of cars. Still Madeki holding out Bow, Alfie Costanzo, and then Charlie O'Brien. That's the order.
New lap record just being set by Alfie Costanzo, down to 50.2 seconds. That's official, 50.2 for Alfie Costanzo.
And the gap from 4th, Charlie O'Brien, back to 5th place, Peter Williamson, if he wants to pick up one more, is 7 seconds. But this is the man they all have to beat. 2 25-lap heats to decide this second round of the Australian Driving Championship. Won the first round at Oran Park by John Smith, with Richard Davison second, Costanzo third, Graham Watson, the Ralph importer, from Sydney, who's not competing today, 4th. Peter Williamson, 5th. And Doug MacArthur, whose car broke a wheel yesterday and slammed the wall and tore one side off the car, and so he's not competing either, 6th. Russell Norden, another favoured driver, or fancied driver for this, who's not running here today, entered but scratched later with something in his crew not ready.
Lap car getting in the way of them now. That's Ron Barnacle in car 11 that you see, with Bow going straight underneath him on the bowl. Barnacle only his second drive in this route, and taking it very quietly, very easily, not pushing it at all, and keeping out of the way of the other cars. As Charlie O'Brien comes out of Alf Costanzo's slipstream, probably too early.
But he saw Alf a little bit boxed in there, and if Charlie sticks with it, John, he just might make it.
I think he'll get through.
Yeah, he's got it. Particularly as the other car retained the boxing effect there, and so Alf Costanzo in car number 1, Australian driving champion for the past 2 years in Formula 5000 cars, and now moving down to the Pacifics, which he would prefer to have the power and of the 5-litre V8, but that class is pretty well defunct. So this was the way to go for him, and he was still supported in the move by the Porsche Cars Australia team, run by Alan Hamilton. Charlie O'Brien, who showed an enormous amount of improvement recently in the hands of Wayne Eckersley, Alan Jones, former chief mechanic in his wonderful years in Formula 1, 79 through to 81 particularly. And O'Brien, Eckersley has developed different side pods for the car in conjunction with people in England, had them tested in the Frank Williams wind tunnel, quarter-scale wind tunnel, and so really is bringing a lot of good contact to the team and technology that they've got in England, but isn't perhaps known to the people here because they're dealing with ground effects all the time there in many classes of racing, whereas over here it's a fairly new technology. And John, one of the problems of Pacifics is not buying the car or being able to drive it, but knowing how to set it up and to get the best out of it, isn't it?
That's right. Well, it's the big problem of knowing how to drive the car, particularly around a circuit, and get the best out of it. It's one thing to get a brand new car straight out of the box, and they do perform particularly well straight off at that. But to get the best out of it is another thing again.
And Peter Williamson in 5th position continues to close the gap. He's down to 5.3 seconds behind the leading 4. He was 6.6 only 2 laps ago. John Bow, Charlie O'Brien right behind him.
Bit of a status quo here, John.
I think
people haven't got quite the speed to catch Badecki.
No, I think Andrew's actually doing it pretty well easy on his own now, but I think Charlie's the big threat with John Bow. He's the one that I can see will make inroads there.
Certainly closing on the bowl. What sort of speed would you be doing as you sweep off the bowl onto the straight?
About 110 miles an hour. Well, I still haven't converted to the kilometres yet. 110 miles an hour, that's my gearing was. And
then up the straight in the various gears?
Yeah, 3rd, 4th, 5th down the straight.
You'd peak
at about 9,500 revs in 5th gear, which would be about 145 miles per hour, depending on whether there's a headwind or a tailwind.
So although as Handford in car 14 goes into the pits, which is a great shame because he was holding 7th place and going very well under some guidance from Larry Perkins, actually, who drove his car in the Australian Grand Prix last November. So although the cars are down on maximum speed, to say the sports sedans and Grand Touring cars, they're actually lapping the circuit faster because they brake better and they're quicker around corners.
Oh, that's right. You get to the end of the straight at 140 miles an hour. You can pull up within 100 yards, 100 feet, sorry, of the actual corner itself. The brakes are that unbelievable.
Do you use much steering lock in a car like this? How much of a turn of the steering wheel would you need as you drive around the circuit?
You'd have, from the centre position, 1 turn either side from lock to lock, but if you used that much, you would be slow.
This is Robert Handford. Young chap, John, who went to England and drove about 15 races in Formula Ford over there. There's Larry Perkins with him, and who's got a Formula Ford lap record up at Lakeside, and with very little experience, a 26-year-old has really come to grips with it very well, putting in a practice time yesterday of 50.7, only half a second slower than much more experienced people.
Yes, that's right, Will. He's done a very, very good job. And he went to New Zealand earlier this year and drove in the International Series in New Zealand and put himself quite well there too.
The pity of it is that he's doing it on his own, has spent $2,000 this weekend on tyres, and will now have to put the car up on blocks because he's got no sponsor and no money left to continue running it for the next few races.
Money's always the problem with any sort of racing, Will.
Charlie O'Brien, as John Smith was saying, nibbling away at John Bowe, and look at him, starting to bite at his heels, and there is just 3.83 seconds back from 4th place Costanzo, car number 1, to 5th place Peter Williamson, car number 7. That has come down from 7 seconds to 3.83. We're looking at 8 laps remaining. They've completed 17. They're coming around to complete 18, so they have 7 laps from now, with the race leader still Andrew Madecki.
Chris Hocking
in car number 2. Bowe in 4, under threat from O'Brien in 3. All of these cars RT4 routes. In 4th place, the Tiga of Alf Costanzo, car number 1. 5th place, the Tolman Toyota of Peter Williamson, car 7.
Oh, and a bit of a wobble there from John Bowe as he comes into the S's, and Charlie O'Brien now all over him.
A long way round there. He knows what he wants, John, but he hasn't found the spot to do it.
Charlie's got a bit of a problem, actually, Will, that he gets very close to the back of John Bowe's car coming onto the straight, and of course it gives him no downforce at all on the front of his cars, and it becomes very loose, and he cannot get the power down onto the car, and consequently misses out a little bit coming down the straight.
Is that inexperience in single-seaters?
Oh, no, it's not. It's a problem that every single-seater driver experiences. Once you get up the back of a car, you've got no downforce on the car whatsoever, and it loses its adhesion.
So it won't turn into corners well.
It will not turn into a corner, and a lot of on the high-speed corners, you've got no wind running over your wing on the rear of the car, and it gives it no downforce on the rear as well. As you can see, Charlie, once you get to the back of John Bowe again, the car gets quite loose.
And Bowe, of course, a fierce competitor, the 28-year-old Tasmanian, and a very hard man to pass.
Oh, yes, he makes the Lucky Nuts car very, very wide. You can see his movements to deliberately put Charlie behind him or keep him behind him, and which is all fair in motor racing. There's nothing wrong with it, and I'd be out there doing the same thing.
And there's Peter Williamson looming up in the far shot of that picture behind Costanzo. The gap 2.89 seconds, but he's got that carrot now, John Smith, of being able to see Costanzo there. And there's Williamson.
Yes, that's right.
And that, of course, really sort of halves the time you need to get forward, doesn't it?
Well, it starts to get your adrenaline pumping once more, and then once you can sight the cars immediately in front of you, it is an extra carrot. I think Alfie's got another problem as well. His car is very untidy coming off the bowl, and I think because he's trying to get away with very little wing, very little downforce on the rear of the car to try and give it a lot of straight line performance, but it's cancelling itself out when he's coming off the bowl because he can't get the full power down.
4 laps to go now as they complete 21. This is a 25-lap heat, and Andrew Madecki doing it in fine style, and time shortening all the time while for Peter Williamson in the red car down there in 5th place.
And indeed, Alf Costanzo starting to lose touch with these front 3 drivers. He's back to 1.8 seconds now behind Charlie O'Brien, so Williamson can really scent him up there.
The sideways forces, John Smith, in these cars, generated by the enormous grip they get, under brakes and through corners, must be very great on the driver. Do you find yourself getting tired in arms and neck?
Yes, particularly around here, Will, with the bowl section of the speedway, because the cars are going such an enormous speed around this section, and I don't think the circuit builder at the time that would have ever designed the circuit to cop the speeds that these cars are going, and consequently the neck muscles on the drivers, with the weight of their helmet on, gets very, very fierce, and your neck muscles get very, very sore. 2 seconds only now between Costanzo and Williamson. Look at him hounding. 3 laps to go. Williamson doing a great job, John, because last November we saw him very untidy at Paula, running off the circuit, 4 or 5 times at least, and really rough everywhere. Yes, that's right. He's got his act together well and truly this weekend. The car is performing very, very well in his hands and also with his crew. He's got an ex-international crew member with him now, Mike Truman, that used to be with Mario Andretti in Formula One, and with the help from Mike Truman, also from Alan Docking, a gentleman in England that does run these Tolman cars in Formula 2, he's well and truly got his act together.
So there's only 1.47 seconds separating the leading three, and still about the same gap. No, Williamson shortening it. It's 1.5 seconds. He's pulled in half a second. Look at him now chasing Alf Costanzo. Great job, because he really has concentrated on that car and his driving, and really pulled out an enormous improvement in performance.
Yes, I think also Willow's had the joint problem of driving a touring car last year, and swapping back and forward from the touring car to the open wheeler is an incredibly hard job. The open wheeler car is so precise that and you tend to be a bit ham-fisted with it after getting out of the touring car, and it made his job equally as hard, but now he's concentrating on the open wheeler. He's doing twice as good a job.
Well, Madecki driving a cool, calm race with about 1 second gap back to John Bowe, who's watching his mirrors most cautiously on Charlie O'Brien, but seems to have him covered. And then the gap back to Costanzo as they go out on their last now with 1.3 seconds, taunting Peter Williamson back there in 5th place in car number 7. 6th place behind him was Hansford in 14. He's gone back out. 64, sorry. So that's Philip Revell now from Richard Davison, 6. Car number 5, Paul Radisich, young New Zealander who's come over and 1 lap down to Chris Hocking in 74. But Madecki doing it in grand style with a great start from 2nd grid position and equal qualifying time to Charlie O'Brien. Running towards the flag and to 1st place in the first of 2 heats in this 2nd round of the Australian Drivers' Championship.
There's the flag.
From Bowe 2nd, Charlie O'Brien 3rd, Alf Costanzo 4th, about 1.2 seconds, I'd guess, in front of Peter Williamson in 5th. So it was Ralphs 1, 2 and 3, Atiga 4th, a Tolman 5th, 6th place then has changed. Sorry, Chris Hocking in 74 was 1 lap down and in front of Philip Revell in 64, followed by Richard Davison 6, but this is the 3 place getters. And that's, John Smith, the way to run a race, isn't it? To a good clean start, drive it a bit on your mirrors and with just enough speed to stay in front.
Well, that's the name of the game, Will. If you can never do it, that's the best way to do it. Obviously, they pulled up with the car very, very good condition. He didn't have to work it that hard after the initial first couple of laps and stroked it home. There's only a couple of seconds in front of John Bowe, but it's enough to do it. You only need half an inch, don't you?
So the race results of the first 25-lap heat of the National Panasonic Formula One Series in the 2nd round of the Australian Formula One Championship. Andrew Madecki wins from John Bowe, Charlie O'Brien and Alf Costanzo. The race time 21 minutes 26.5 seconds, and the new lap record to Alf Costanzo on 50.2, 1.1 seconds under the Andrew Madecki record set last year.
And congratulations to Andrew Madecki, winner of the first part of the Formula One event here this afternoon. Congratulations, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Malcolm.
And the machine obviously performed very well throughout the race.
Yeah, I must say that it was, the car performed exceptionally well, and I really only had to drive as fast as I needed to do, stay in front. You know.
Track conditions pretty good today?
Yeah, the track was very good. You know, the tyres have fallen a bit, but that's part of the course.
Wouldn't go much more than 25 laps and you'd reach.
I don't think so. No, they're in shreds now.
No points out of the first round. What was the problem there?
Oh, we modified the car quite a bit, Malcolm, and we had teething troubles with it in the first heat. But I think they needed the start.
So you got your 20 points out of this one and a big chance to take the top prize here this afternoon in the 2nd round. How do you think you'll go?
Oh, I think we'll go all right. You know, I think it's going to be hard. But, I think I gained a fairly good advantage from getting a good start then. But I'm hoping we'll come out on top.